Thank you very much. Until I get the microphone, I'll just start like this. And I'd like to thank the organisers, first of all, for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I couldn't come any earlier, and I hope that there's not going to be too much redundancy with what you heard yesterday. Now, my presentation, if you're interested in what I'm saying, at the very last slide, you will find this URL again. And there you can find a handout. So you have now 30 minutes to decide whether you're interested in what I'm talking about. And if yes, the only thing you have to write down at the very end is this address. And now, excuse me, I'll just try to change. Now, physical activity and health. It's a dumb thing, isn't it? I mean, obviously already Hippocrates, who's the father of all modern physicians, knew that physical activity is very, very important. So what am I going to talk about now? The questions I would like to address with you are the four questions you find here. Where is physical activity today in public health? And I'm going to focus rather on the global level than on the European level, because I think you heard yesterday from Minika Middelbeek and also from Winfried Bunze very much of what's going on within WHO at the European level, and also what's going on within HEPA Europe. Then I'm going to be talking about what public health can actually do for physical activity promotion, what sports can do for physical activity promotion, and how we could possibly go forward. Now, the first question we have to address is physical activity actually important for health? And if we're looking at this in the modern sense, then we must say that the first time that there has been a comprehensive view of that was only in 1996. There have been single studies before that, but in 1996, the US Surgeon General, who is the chief medical officer of the United States, brought out this report on this very important topic. And you can see the first studies that were actually cited there were from the 50s for cardiovascular disease. These were the work of Jerry Morris. He was actually comparing cardiovascular disease in bus drivers and bus conductors in these long double-decker buses. So the conductors who had to run up and down between the two levels, they were healthier, actually, than the drivers who were sitting there all the time. And then about 20 years later on, the first studies came out about cancer, physical activity and cancer. And if you're looking at the number of publications you can find these days, this is the PubMed database, which is the most important database for medical research. You can see that every year there's something like between 6,000 and now about 12,000 publications out of physical activity. It has increased very much, and it's not about single studies anymore, it's really about trying to judge the entire evidence. So very much has been done there lately. And it was again the Americans who 2 years ago did a great job. This is a report of almost 700 pages in putting together all the new evidence that was there. It was basically an update of the Surgeon General's report. And you can see there the summary. There is a relationship with fitness. There is a protection from disabling medical conditions. And there are lower rates for various chronic diseases. So that's the overall assessment of the experts. If you look at the details, you can see the black arrows. That's where there is strong evidence, and white arrows, there's still modest evidence. So not one single reason, but a whole range of reasons why people should be physically active for health. And if you add the older adults, there's even more. If you go to the children, there is less, and this is mainly because it's much more difficult to measure physical activity in children than in adults. And obviously, physical inactivity causes mainly chronic disease. That means until the children actually develop the disease, they're not children anymore. There is more than enough already now to know why physical activity is important for health. And what is very important about this is you don't have to be physically active for health purposes for it to be good for your health. You can be physically active because you love it, because it's cheaper, because it's easier to do it, and it's always good for your health. So this is not the rationale of how you can motivate people to be physically active. This is the public health rationale that should give a reason to society to promote physical activity. Now, the Americans, again, have tried to update or have tried to integrate this into recommendations, and I know that Liedeke Middelbeek has explained to you yesterday WHO's new physical activity recommendations. They're very similar, so I'm going to go through this very briefly. What we can see there, the most important thing is don't be inactive. The second thing, substantial health benefits, half an hour a day, or as they say now, 2.5 hours a week, of moderate intensity, or half that time of vigorous intensity. Preferably spread throughout the week. Now, you can also combine moderate and vigorous intensity activity. Then, what else you have? More is better. And finally, even more is even better after that. And finally, strengthening, muscle strengthening at least twice a week, that's very good for you. So these are the current recommendations for adults as we have them. And I think what is very important about this is, behind this is basically this dose-response relationship. That means the more you do, the better. And it is not, you go to a threshold of 30 minutes, up to 29 minutes, you have no effect whatsoever, and on from 31 minutes, you have the full effect. That means if we are doing physical activity promotion, sports promotion with people who already do something, they can still profit. When do you get to the level up here? Well, most studies show this is about 3,000 to 3,500 kilocalories per week. That corresponds to about 50 kilometers of jogging, about 5 hours of swimming. Who does that? Well, I guess many of the people in here do it, or used to do it when they were young. But if you're looking at the population level, practically nobody does that. So the entire population, all of our countries, is on this curve somewhere. If you look at, I mean, I'm coming from Switzerland, so our most famous marathon runner is Victor Roger, and in a good week, he does about 200 kilometers, so he's about there. But he's not there. It's still good, but he doesn't have to do that much for health reasons. But we can do, not only we can deal with the inactive people, that's where it's most important from a health point of view, but we can also help people who are already active to become more active, and it's still good for their health. I think this is a very important message for sports for all as well. Now, there is no question physical activity is important for health. Is physical activity promotion established in public health? And you heard a little bit about that. Heidi also alluded to it, and I'm just going to take again the example of the US. I've shown you the first report, 96. It took them 12 years to actually develop, for the first time, official national recommendations. And now I'm going back to this concept of HEPA that the Finns have actually developed. This is physical activity for health in general. What they have done for the first time, only this year, they have developed a physical activity action plan within the US. So if you're going into the timeline again, it is really very, very recent, as Heidi just said. Obviously, there were other countries that were earlier, and the Finns are an excellent example of that. They were concerned about that already in the 50s and the 60s. They started at the regional level in the 70s, and from the 80s on, they started really developing activities at the national level. But the Finns were the real front runners, maybe the Canadians with Carter as well. This is the exception. This is really the exception. If we're looking at global public health, and there obviously is WHO who's in charge of that, the World Health Organization, the first thing, I mean, there have been activities, there have been working groups, informal working groups in the 90s, but not much more than that. The first thing that really mentions in an official status physical activity, but only within context, is this global strategy for the prevention of and control of non-communicable diseases. But frankly, we didn't hear very much about that. This appeared, it was in the World Health Assembly in 2000. The first time it was really out and was noticed on a larger scale was the Global Strategy on Diet, Physical Activity and Health. But again, very much focused on obesity. And obesity is only one of the many, many health effects we have of physical activity. Now, 2008, there has been an action plan for the Global Strategy for the Prevention and Control of Non-Communicable Diseases, and there, physical inactivity actually is a distinct element. A year ago, there has been a new assessment of the global health risks, and you can see in all countries worldwide, physical inactivity is growing as a problem, and they have made an attempt of actually quantifying the burden of disease. These are deaths attributed to the 19 leading risk factors, and you can see Physical inactivity is number 4 worldwide, and not only in high income, but also middle income and low income countries. And what is particularly interesting, 4 of these other risk factors, high blood pressure, high blood glucose, overweight and obesity, high cholesterol, they can all be influenced through physical activity as well. So physical activity really is on the agenda now, one would say. And then again, we have the global physical activity recommendations, which only came out this year, and Lily has talked about that in the debate. Now, the reason why I could only join you last night was I was in Geneva. There was a big meeting there in conjunction with this strategy on non-communicable diseases, and it was about research priorities, specifically for low and middle income countries. Now, this is only taken from my notes, so this is not the official wording, you will see that. But these are the research priorities as they have been defined yesterday, and I can tell you there was a fight within the working group. Fiona Bull was in the working group to actually maintain physical activity as a single entity. There were people who wanted to lump it back into obesity and dieting. So there's a long way to go. We are on the agenda.